Have you heard about the MasterCard and Visa censorship of anime and manga stuff? Yeah, but I have not heard about MasterCard and Visa censoring anime. Oh yeah, basically the West, mainly America, is forcing Japan to censor anime and manga more. I don't know how much I believe that, honestly. Basically, MasterCard and Visa are not vibing with Japan's anime and manga industry, and they cut it off. Were they sponsors before? They forced the creator of Love Hina to shut down the Manga Dojin website because they forced the payments to shut down. Oh shit! Places like DL sites don't allow Visa and MasterCard anymore. Is it anime and manga, or is it adult content? Those are two different things. The weeb stuff in general. Depending on how much Japan cares about, depending on if it's stuff like DL site and adult sites and Dojin sites, I don't know how big the industry is abroad compared to the domestic one. Dojin's basically region locked in Japan now. Ah, going back to the old days, huh? I mean, if corporations want to distance themselves from adult content, that's fair enough to the corporations. I'm gonna be the first to say that Japan, especially the adult content, it has some weird stuff here, man. It has some weird stuff that I am not surprised that corporations don't want to be involved with. Look, if there's one thing I understand about Japan, is that not only with adult stuff, you can find niches for anything. You can find girls' bars for anything. You can find themed bars, themed services for anything in Japan. So I believe that Japan will find a way. The world may try to censor Japan, but Japan ain't gonna allow that. Japan will find a way, man.
Man, clips like these are the worst type of clips. I ain't gonna necessarily lie. I don't know who or what I should be more disappointed in. The fact that the censorship stuff is happening and, you know, there's really not really any sort of force that can change it as far as I'm aware of or I know. Or the fact that they didn't know anything about what was going on when it comes down to it. Which, I don't know, I feel a bit more shame on that side. So when it comes down to it, let's just keep this very much a stack. We already know about the censorship that's happening in anime and things of the sort like that. And it's not obviously just adult stuff as well. It's just anime as a whole, because this shit been going into mangas. This has been happening to, you know, anime in the studios, as we have seen plenty of times before, especially with Crunchyroll and things and stuff like that. They might deny it, but we know it's true. Then there's like plenty of, you know, light novels that could potentially be hits, or probably has been hit, that we don't necessarily know about, possibly. And it's just like a continuous circle of stuff like that. Games over in Japan been hit with this, especially with Dragon Quest and the whole pixel remake version of like Dragon Quest 3 or whatever. And essentially you had the whole people back behind the scenes, the creator of Dragon Quest, be like, who's asking for these changes and all that type of stuff. So I find it completely baffling how someone has not heard about this stuff while in the country, much less in the circles that you're in. I find that a little weird, right? And that's my big fat thing of what drives me up a wall probably the most, right? Like, we talked about this whole MasterCard and Visa thing before, about how anime is getting censored because of those people not necessarily wanting to, you know, let them do business and all that type of stuff. So we've already talked about that before, but one of the points I had in it, especially a side point, I would say a pretty big one, is that the only people that is talking about this type of stuff is mainly people that is outside of the space, or mid-tier, like, I won't say mid-tier, I don't want to call them mid-tier because that might make it sound like, oh, they're not necessarily good content creators. Not that, it's just that they don't have the sizable audience that, you know, that's like way bigger and stuff, right? But it's like the only people that are talking about it is like the middle ground type anime YouTubers like Chibi Reviews, sometimes Rev, and other people like that. And then you got like the only other person I can think of really that's at the top of stuff is like Asmongold, because he been talking about this a fair decent amount when stuff has to be brought up. Like, he was pretty much the only bigger content creator to kind of bring up, hey, translations in anime is not necessarily that great, after, you know, seeing Rev's whole take about it. And then when it comes down to the whole censorship of the MasterCard and Visas, he was again the only person to really bring it up. And now when we have an actual anime YouTuber to come through to talk about this stuff, they don't care that deep. It's not necessarily that big of a concern. Am I tripping? Like, I feel like I'm the one that's a bit tripping here, and am I not? Or is this how everybody basically feels? Like, this is just outlandish, honestly. This is the very same field that helped build up a lot of these people's careers, and it's like nothing matter. It doesn't really matter to a high ass scale. It feels weird as shit. I'm not gonna lie. Am I expecting everybody to know everything of what's going on? Of course not, especially when it comes down to, what different countries are doing domestically and all that type of stuff. Of course, but at the very same time, if it's a part of the field that I'm a part of, and it's something that obviously I care greatly about, much less build a career on, I'm gonna care when stuff actually happens that could threaten things, right? Like, this is no different from basically how DEI entered the whole gaming space, right? Because when it first censored, no one cared. No one paid attention to the signs of what was happening and things of sort like that. But then when it started to actually get to this point of the 2020s where we're seeing all this kind of stuff now, now everybody's mad. But we should have been mad the first dang time. The warning shot was Simmering Kagura, the game with ninja chicks and big old biddies and all that stuff jiggling about. Right, you might not necessarily care for that stuff, but that was a whole warning shot. You just didn't realize it. And when it comes down to it, that warning shot led into like a lot of other things happening and removal of a lot of other things. And barely now we're trying to make a comeback in some shape and form. And it's so whack. It's so whack. Honestly, even 3 years ago, I would argue that we were still having some stuff, maybe not a whole bunch that was accepted, but some stuff, like interspecies review all of a sudden, that was a fire show. But at the very same time, it's like that junk kind of wouldn't be made now, or it's like it's more difficult to bring something like that out now. And hell, they tried to and pretty much did kill, the English side of it, because they, kind of just ruined the hell out of the licenses when it comes down to episode 3 and beyond, So it's not necessarily great. It just goes to show you that this junk has been around for a while. Censoring anime has been for a while. And now they're just trying to get to their hands to the direct source of things. Trying to get their hands into the source of things right before it gets any type of release. That's wild to me. And then when it comes down to the whole topic of, well, there is a lot of weird stuff that happens in anime. Yes. But guess what? There's also a lot of weird stuff that happens in real life. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens in non-fiction shows. And shows where you have real life actors in it. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens in that. But we don't see any complaints on that side. It's only when we get to anime then, everything is a bit weird. And that's not how it works, right? It doesn't make sense. It's very stupid. And again, I don't see how you did not see any of this at all, when this has literally been in a space for years upon years upon years. It's a bit wild to me. And this is why I can understand why so many people don't watch anime YouTubers anymore, right? I can very much understand it now, because they claim to be a part of the whole industry or be a part of Japan and love the culture of Japan and stuff like that and appreciate anime and what it is. But at the very same time, when stuff like this happen and then you don't say anything about it, and then you wonder why people are being so mad and negative, or just not necessarily understanding why people ain't on your side, there's a fair amount of reasons why. I can't explain every single thing about why people are negative and everything like that, right? But I can definitely tell you and express what I personally feel when it comes down to situations like this, especially these, because it's like when you see your favorite genre getting censored or basically getting axed in some shape and form, I'm not gonna lie, the reason why you have me reporting on some of the stuff a lot of the time is because I'm tired, because there is basically no one else that's really talking about this stuff for real, right? And there's not people getting the bigger picture of everything or how everything could potentially change. Even if there is a chance that, something may not necessarily happen due to something going down, I still would rather talk about it just in case, because that's just how it is. For example, with the whole Sony and Kalakaua thing, there's been some more information about that and what the actual truth of the situation is. It's not Sony America that wanting to own it, it's more Sony Japan, and I would be perfectly fine with that if it wasn't for the fact Sony America sucks ass. They literally have all the voting power, all the power just to do whatever the hell they want to, and that's essentially how that goes. The only reason why we ain't seeing a revival of Concord right now is because of Sony Japan, which is great. So, you know, Japan knows what they're doing. It's when you add America to the mix, that's when things get bad, and it's just a frustrating circle, left to right and right to left. So, again, this is the stuff that we have to constantly deal with. And it's, again, been something that's been going on for literal years at this point. And as we also discussed, you might be like, well, if they tone down some of the adult content, or they get rid of some of the stuff that happens in anime too much, then that's perfectly fine. Sure, you might say that now, but then when it starts attacking the things that you like intense violence, or, you know, other types of things that also go into the spectrum of things that you care for and it can't be done now, then you're going to start complaining about it. It's like, nope, this is basically the same thing with the Syrian Congress stuff. You should have been fighting for this day one. Why don't you just try to go and jump into it now instead of waiting until later, until it starts affecting the things that you actually like? Like, no, that shouldn't be the case. Like, let's fight this shit together and just call it a day. Like, don't wait until stuff get on your doorstep and then it's a problem. Handle that shit before it gets to that point. And the fact that he has not heard anything about this until now is crazy to me. So I just going to assume pretty much anybody in their circle probably doesn't know what the heck is happening, or they're calling it BS, just like he was talking about, you know, in the beginning of the clip. And it's just like, how, what is your how do you function? What is your circle actually like? Like, it has to be so one-sided of a circle. Like, I don't necessarily understand that, right? It just is baffling and confusing. And then it's like, oh, no wonder why, you know, things get walked over and, you know, things get shitted on equally hard when it comes down to it. Because it's just like, yeah, you have the whole power of influence as a top creator, especially within this field. You have a whole power to maybe change something. You have connections within the whole industry. You have something you can obviously do or bring attention to, and yet you choose not to use it. This is why I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish there was more newer people to come in that cared that much, to come through in some shape and form, and then build them up to be bigger channels, so we can actually get something going instead of just looking at the circle jerk, I guess, that is going on currently. Because this is absolute nonsense. If I was definitely up in that top level, best believe your boy is going to be trying to, you know, bring some attention to this in a higher scope. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous that this is the case. You can't say you care for the anime industry, or you care for anime, or you care for the culture of everything, if you just sit here not know that, you know, basically a whole nother country is trying to impede on the progress of that culture and anime that you so happen to like. Honestly, it's weird, and it's not necessarily how that should work. And if you didn't know, well, now you know, and then go ahead and talk about it. You don't, I mean, and again, I know somebody might be like, oh, but, you know, they're not necessarily forced to talk about it. You're right, they're not forced to, but they should. Like, they got everything else they can talk about, everything else they like to bring up to the table, right? If we can bring something like the whole Iron Mouse situation, which, no, she doesn't deserve to get bullied and harassed, but at the very same time, can you also talk about this damn thing? Like, I'm just gonna keep it very much a stack. And then when it comes down to people being like, my mental health, it's so negative. Well, why is everything so negative? Because we're tired of getting screwed. Literally, that's what this comes down to. At least for me personally, I'm tired of seeing the games I enjoy, the media I consume, the anime that I watch getting threatened 5 million times over because somebody with a corporate ladder, somebody in a corporate office somewhere holding up 2 damn credit cards being like, you know what? I don't like that lolly right there, so banhammer and all that type of stuff. Like, it's so whack. Why is that the case? Why do we have to wait 5,000 years before somebody actually does something or say something about what's going on? There's a little bit of something of an attack, I guess, in the governmental space on MasterCard and Visa, just a little bit, but it's definitely not enough, right? And you can't just rely on Ken Akamatsu, to come through, try to preserve everything on his own and try to, take, all the preservation of anime and things of the sort like that and try to fight it on his own, because he's just one person in the Japanese government. He's one dude. If we're not having like a shit ton of other people helping with that matter, then it's gonna be definitely hard to kind of, fight that junk. Not one person can just do everything. We need a whole group of people to come through and do something, right? So that's just how that is. And it's baffling again to me how none of the people, Anime Man, Connor, Giga, none of these people, any people that they know that's at the top, just talks about this, but they'll coast their success off of anime and just keep being like, yeah, this anime is going hard, man, or this manga right here is dope as hell, or I worked on this damn show, I voice acted this shit, and yet you let the industry also burn to the ground and let everybody else kind of just deal with that shit. That's so weird. And then again, when people get mad and then start being negative, you want to start getting mad about that? That's not how that works. And I know somebody could easily say, well, when it comes down to it, somebody else could probably talk about it. Yeah, they can, but guess what? They probably don't have the power. They probably don't have the influence and the people that, these three people have. So at the end of the day, you best believe they should definitely talk about it, and best believe people are going to try to, want to push them to say something about it, because, yeah, no one has the ability to do so. No one definitely has that type of industry power to do anything about it, but, the people you would think that's at the top, but then they don't do anything. Which I heard, or at least I read a comment where somebody was like, oh, maybe it could be like a whole defamation thing because Japan don't play about defamation and stuff like that. But it's not defamation if you're just criticizing. Like, you can criticize somebody without necessarily being like, oh, this company is ass, it sucks, all this type of stuff. You don't have to go about it like that. You could still criticize stuff. If that's just not possible over there, then, that's very sensitive with Japan. I ain't gonna necessarily lie. But still, nonetheless, you can criticize something without necessarily trying to jeopardize your whole reputation. You can. Like, I'm just gonna keep very much a sec. It's like when you have, like, people being like, super active and super hyped for voice actors, but then when you don't necessarily know the spectrum of how crazy and dark sometimes these voice actors can get at times, and then you just basically kind of run over that opinion or that fact, and essentially you just kind of be like super still for the voice actors and whatever, it's like, you can't necessarily just take one part of the truth and then not look at the other part too. Like, there's been some crappy shit voice actors has done, so we can't necessarily just sit here and be like, oh yes, voice actors are so good all the time. That's not how it works. It's never been how it works, right? That's just impossible. Like Chris Chan, for example, for whatever dumbass reason, he got somebody. How the hell is that possible? I have no idea. The man's an actual monster that went out their way to, violate their own mom and everything, essentially. But when it comes down to it, you basically have people just be like, funny meme man, or all that type of stuff. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. It's not even a little weird. It's actually big weird. So that's just how it is. But you get the point. At the end of the day, it's just frustrating that you have people outside of the anime community come through and tell you like, hey, this thing right here is a bad move and it's a bad idea, and this thing sucks right now, right? This isn't a way that the industry should go, right? And even if it's not necessarily just talking about, the grand scope of anime, you at least understand that there is some people out there, like for example with the Katakawa stuff, Maximilian Dude also was like mainly talking about the gaming side of things, but even he was like, there's no real benefit to getting this deal, right? There's no really big benefit for gamers to be looking at this deal, honestly. We're not getting much out of it, which is true. But at the very same time, I can kind of somewhat understand why Kadokawa is doing it, because also Tencent is trying to buy them, which, as you know, is a not Japanese company, but a Chinese company. And obviously, if they get their hands on that, most likely a lot of the stuff that is being produced is going to get censored to high heaven and not going to be in the best position. But if you get like a Japanese hand in it, like Sony Japan, if it was only Sony Japan, I wouldn't have a problem. But when it comes down to it, that's why they're also trying to get their hands into, Sony, to let them get it, because obviously they won't have to censor hard as hell. But then here comes bitch ass Sony America, so who really knows? It's just a messy situation, no matter who really gets Kadokawa, whether they get sold off or whether they just try to stay there themselves, or whatever the case it may be, right? Again, the whole point is just, I hate the fact that people really only look at the parts of the problem that they want to look at, and then they choose to ignore the whole damn circus of what's going on, right? Anime is getting censored by America, and they're trying to dumb down what anime is so everybody can be a part of it. Here's the shocker lesson of the day, kids. Not every piece of media and not every little thing is going to be for you. Like, that's just a fact. Not every single time you watch a damn anime comes through, it's not going to be for you. That's why, back then at least, people would just call you weird and kind of leave it at that. Nowadays, it's like, oh, you gotta get sent a death threat or two, or you gotta get doxxed for information or so, if you like this certain thing, and all that type of stuff. This is not the anime community I grew up with. When it comes down to it, I remember getting my ass bullied hard as hell. In fact, I miss them damn days, because at least we had the shit that we had, and it wasn't ass as it is now. Which is wild to say, but at the very same time, it is true. So that's just, again, how it is. You can't necessarily just sit here and just point out something like a ninja scroll or whatever, and then get mad that ninja scroll exists because it doesn't cater to you. And that's kind of like the whole big ass problem. That's been the problem for like a few years now, if not like the whole 10, 14 years, honestly. The fact that everybody wants to be included in stuff. Shit just not made for you. That's just how it is. Can't necessarily... I think I saw like a whole tweet where somebody was like, yo, you can't have characters going through assault, a certain type of assault, But, bitch, yes you can. They're fictional characters. You can do whatever the hell you want to. It doesn't matter. Do what you want. Why do I have to basically be investigated by the internet police over my decision of what I want to do with my own characters and things of the sort like that? Again, too much of this shit. Too much of people trying to get into every little thing and trying to, involve themselves in everything, because it doesn't work out in the end. Right? That's why the gaming space sucks right now. That's why the anime community sucks right now. It's why a lot of these bigger content creators of the anime side, because they don't want to gatekeep and, let everybody in, why they kind of suck right now. Because it's just not necessarily good. It's not prime shit anymore. Now it's just mid shit. That's essentially what it is. Like, for another example, Dandadan's gonna come out with an episode next week that pretty much is gonna make everybody either mad as hell or either essentially be screeching what the hell in all this sort of ways and stuff, when in reality, people that like Dandadan and stuff like that, they should just be having a chill time watching the show. They should be like, dang, that's crazy that's happened, and just nothing else, right? But now we gotta worry about, oh no, what other people are gonna say. Bitch, it's a show with fictional characters. Let people cook. Let them do what they want to. Even if the meal was bad, still let it cook, because you're gonna get more episodes any damn way. And it's so weird how people are, Again, I just blame that on the soft side of society. So my whole point of this entire discussion, hopefully I can end this time, because I've been talking for too dang long. But when it comes down to it though, it's just the fact that you have all this stuff that's happening to the anime industry. There's already a lot of problems, whether it's animators not getting paid enough, and the censorship stuff, and just the crazy work hours that go into these shows and things of the sort like that. There's a lot of problems. But when you see a issue, don't wait. Call that shit out. Even if it could be something that ruins a reputation or burn a bridge or so? Would you rather let something die, the thing that you enjoy die? Or would you rather just, you know, call it out and hopefully hope for the best that things will get fixed? Because I'm hoping for the best that things get fixed if I call it out. Like, that's the whole point, you know? That's just how it is. If a bridge gets burnt or two, then it is what it is. I know a lot of people don't like that because money and, you know, their reputation online and things of sort like that. But at the very same time, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes you gotta call shit out when it needs to be called out. That's why there have been so many trash ass content creators, because no one been calling them out, especially when they're friends, quote unquote, with the person. Like, a good friend doesn't let people just do the wild and shit that they do, especially within recent memory and recent years and time. So there's also that. But that's really what I want to say for this one. This has been just an absolutely frustrating situation. And honestly, it makes me ashamed to look at basically any content creator now that's like in the anime field that's way up there now, right? There's very few that honestly that is up there that I give a shit about. Mainly just like one or two. But like at the very end of things though, it's just like, it's a shame on the mad big scale of content creation of anime. You don't get these people just bringing this shit up where they need to bring it up. And it's sad and it's annoying and it's honestly trash. It just is. I get it. Maybe you don't want to focus on negative stuff all the time, but at the very same time, you got to every now and again, especially when it's a part of the medium that made who you are. It's just weird and it's baffling. So call that shit out. It's not gonna kill you. I promise you it won't. But that's really what I want to say for this one. So again, hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on the way out. Also follow me on socials, and if you'd like to donate to the channel, Kofi and Cash App is available as well. And until next boy Jay, sign off. Have a blessed day.